Have you ever been in a crowded room, surrounded by people, engaged in conversations, yet felt more alone than if you were sitting by yourself in complete silence? Have you ever wondered why the more connected we try to be, the more disconnected we actually feel? There's something most people don't understand about true connection, something that seems completely backwards, almost paradoxical. The secret isn't getting closer, it's stepping back. Today, I want to show you something that will completely change how you experience relationships, how you understand presence, and how you connect with everything around you. Because what if I told you that the people who observe life from the outside, the ones who seem distant or detached, are actually the ones experiencing the deepest, most authentic connections of all? Martin Heidegger, one of the most profound philosophers of the 20th century, discovered something revolutionary about human existence. He understood that most of us live what he called an inauthentic existence, trapped in what he termed das Man, the anonymous they-self, where we lose ourselves in the crowd, in other people's expectations, in the noise of everyday chatter. We think we're connected, but we're actually drowning in superficiality. Heidegger showed us that there's a fundamental difference between being physically present and being authentically present, between participating in life and truly experiencing life, between being with others and being with yourself in the presence of others. And the path to authentic connection, to what he called genuine being in the world, doesn't come from diving deeper into the crowd. It comes from stepping back and observing. This isn't about becoming antisocial or disconnected. This is about discovering a way of being that most people never experience because they're too busy performing, too busy trying to fit in, too busy being who they think they should be instead of who they actually are. When you learn to observe from the outside, something magical happens. You start seeing the truth behind the masks. You begin to understand the authentic being that exists beneath all the social performances. You connect with the essence rather than the persona. Think about the last time you were at a social gathering. Were you fully present, or were you performing? Were you listening to understand, or were you waiting for your turn to speak? Were you connecting with the people in front of you, or were you managing how you appeared to them? Most of us, without realizing it, spend our entire lives caught up in what Heidegger called the everydayness of existence. We're so busy being part of the scene that we never actually see the scene. But there's another way. There's a mode of existence that allows you to be both connected and clear, both present and aware, both engaged and authentic. It's what happens when you learn to step back, not physically, but existentially. When you learn to observe life from what Heidegger called the clearing, that open space of awareness where truth becomes visible. If you've ever felt like an outsider looking in, if you've ever sensed that your way of seeing the world was somehow different, more penetrating, more real than the surface interactions around you, then what I'm about to share will resonate deep in your soul. Because you're not broken. You're not antisocial. You're awake in a world of sleepwalkers. Let me show you exactly how this works and why the people who master this way of being experience connections that go deeper than anything most people ever imagined possible. First insight, the illusion of the crowd connection. Most people believe that to feel connected, they need to be in the middle of everything. They need to be talking, sharing, participating, engaging constantly. They equate activity with connection, presence with performance. But Heidegger understood something profound about what he called das Man, the anonymous public self that we become when we lose ourselves in the crowd. When you're completely immersed in social situations, when you're trying to keep up with a conversation, manage your image, say the right things, laugh at the right moments, something crucial gets lost. You lose touch with your authentic being. You stop being yourself and start being who you think others want you to be. You become what Heidegger called present at hand, like an object among other objects, reacting and responding according to social scripts rather than authentic choice. Think about it. Have you ever left a party or social gathering feeling somehow empty, despite having talked to dozens of people? Have you ever felt like you performed well socially but came home feeling like no one actually saw you? That's because you were operating from das Man, the inauthentic self that conforms to social expectations but has no real substance, no genuine presence. Write in the comments, what is that feeling like for you, being in a crowd but feeling completely alone? I want to know if you recognize this experience, because what you're about to discover will transform how you understand that sensation forever. The person who observes from the outside sees this dance clearly. They see how people are not really connecting with each other, but with projected versions, with social masks, with the ideas they have about each other, rather than with authentic being. They see the loneliness hiding behind the laughter, the uncertainty behind the confidence, the searching behind the small talk. And from that place of clear observation, something beautiful becomes possible. Real connection. Not connection with personas, but connection with the authentic being that exists beneath all the social performance. When you're not caught up in managing your own image, when you're not performing your own social role, you have the capacity to see and connect with who people really are. Second insight. The power of authentic presence through distance. Here's where Heidegger's insight becomes revolutionary. He understood that authentic presence isn't about physical proximity. It's about existential clarity. When you observe from the outside, you're not becoming disconnected. You're becoming present in a completely different way. Imagine watching a play from the audience versus being an actor on stage. The actor is completely immersed, reacting to each moment, caught up in the drama. But the observer sees the whole story. They understand the patterns, the themes, the deeper meaning that the actors, caught up in their individual scenes, might miss entirely. This is what happens when you learn to observe social situations, relationships, even your own life, from what Heidegger called the clearing, that space of openness where things can be seen as they truly are. You're not less involved. You're involved in a more authentic way. You're present to the truth rather than caught up in the drama. When you observe from the outside, you start to see things that are invisible to people who are completely immersed. You see the unspoken emotions behind people's words. You notice the patterns of behavior that reveal deeper truths about their character. You become sensitive to the authentic moments that break through the social performance. Those brief instances when someone's real self shines through their mask. And people feel this. They sense when someone is truly seeing them, rather than just interacting with their social persona. They feel the difference between someone who is present to their authentic being and someone who is just going through the social motions. This is why the person who observes from the outside often becomes the one that others seek out for real conversation, for genuine connection, for moments of truth. You become what Heidegger called ready to hand, not an object in the social scene, but a presence that facilitates authentic being in others. People feel safe to drop their masks around you because you're not performing. They feel permission to be real because you're being real, even in your observational distance. If you're recognizing yourself in these words, if you're starting to understand that what you thought was your weakness might actually be your greatest strength, then you're ready for what comes next, because there's so much more to discover about this way of being. Third insight, from participation to authentic being in the world. Most people think that being engaged means being reactive. They think that caring means being caught up in every emotion, every drama, every social dynamic. But Heidegger showed us something deeper about what it means to truly care, what he called Sorge. a fundamental care that comes not from emotional reactivity, but from authentic presence. When you observe from the outside, you discover a different kind of engagement. Instead of being pulled into the drama, you become present to what's actually happening. Instead of reacting to the surface, you respond to the depth. Instead of getting lost in the noise, you tune in to the authentic communication that's happening beneath the words. This is what Heidegger meant by authentic being in the world. You're not separate from the world, not disconnected or detached, but you're also not dissolved into it, not lost in the anonymity of das Man. For free. You maintain your authentic being while being fully present to the authentic being of others. Think about the people in your life who you feel most connected to. I guarantee they're not the ones who agree with everything you say or who are always available for every social event. They're the ones who see you clearly, who are present to who you really are beneath your social masks. They're the ones who have learned to observe, to be present without being reactive, to care without being caught up in drama. This kind of presence is magnetic. When you're not trying to get anything from social interactions, when you're not performing or managing your image, when you're simply present to what is, people are drawn to that authenticity. They hunger for real connection in a world full of superficial interaction. But there's something even deeper here. When you observe from the outside, you don't just connect more authentically with others. You connect more authentically with existence itself. You start to see the patterns, the beauty, the profound interconnectedness that's invisible when you're caught up in the day-to-day drama of social life. If you just felt like someone finally understood your loneliness in the crowd, subscribe. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's clarity. It's the ability to see beyond social masks and connect with what's real. Fourth insight, the clearing where authentic connection becomes possible. Heidegger spoke of something he called Lichtung, the clearing in the forest where light can enter, where things become visible that were hidden in the darkness of the dense trees. When you observe from the outside, you create this clearing in your own existence. Most people live their entire lives in the dense forest of social expectations, cultural conditioning, and unconscious reactions. They never step back far enough to see the clearing, to experience that open space where authentic choice becomes possible, where real connections can form, where genuine understanding can emerge. But when you learn to observe, when you step back from the immediate demands of social performance, you enter this clearing. And from this space, everything changes. You see people not as they present themselves, not as you need them to be, but as they actually are. You see situations not through the lens of your own fears and desires, but with clarity about what's actually happening. This is where the deepest connections become possible, because real connection doesn't happen between personas, between social masks, between the versions of ourselves that we think will be acceptable to others. Real connection happens between authentic beings who have the courage to show up as they actually are. When you observe from the clearing, you give others permission to step into that same space. Your authentic presence calls forth authentic presence in others. Your willingness to see clearly creates safety for others to be seen clearly. Your distance from social performance creates space for genuine encounter. And this is the paradox that Heidegger understood so deeply. The more you step back from the desperate attempt to connect, the more profound connections become available to you. The more you release the need to be understood, the more deeply you understand. The more you stop performing yourself, the more you can appreciate the authentic being of others. People who master this way of being often describe feeling more connected to life, to others, to existence itself than they ever thought possible. Not because they're doing more, but because they're being more. Not because they're trying harder to connect, but because they've stopped interfering with the natural connections that want to emerge. Tell me in the comments, when did you discover that this loneliness was actually authentic connection? What was that moment of recognition for you? because I want to understand your journey into this deeper way of being. And here's what Heidegger discovered that changes everything. This isn't just a social strategy. This isn't just a way to have better relationships. This is a way of existing authentically in the world. This is how you discover who you actually are beneath all the social conditioning, all the expectations, all the roles you've been playing. When you observe from the outside, when you create that clearing of authentic presence, you don't just connect more deeply with others, you connect more deeply with your own authentic being. You discover what Heidegger called your ownmost existence, the way of being that is uniquely and authentically yours. Most people spend their entire lives trying to figure out who they are by looking at how others respond to them, by measuring themselves against social expectations, by trying to fit into predetermined categories. But authentic self-discovery doesn't happen in the crowd. It happens in the clearing, in that space of observational distance where you can see clearly not just others, but yourself. This is the profound truth that Heidegger revealed. Authentic existence, authentic connection, authentic understanding. None of these things come from trying harder, from being more social, from participating more intensively in the drama of everyday life. They come from stepping back into that clear space where things can be seen as they actually are. And from that space, a different kind of participation becomes possible. Not the unconscious reactivity of das Man, not the performance of social roles, but authentic engagement that comes from genuine choice, from clear seeing, from authentic care. The person who observes from the outside isn't disconnected from life. They're connected to life in its deepest, most authentic form. They see the beauty that's invisible to people caught up in social performance. They experience the profound interconnectedness that exists beneath the surface drama. They participate in existence not as actors playing roles, but as authentic beings encountering other authentic beings in the mystery of shared existence. This is why observing from the outside connects you more deeply with everything. Because when you step out of the dense forest of social expectations and unconscious reactions, when you enter the clearing of authentic presence, you don't become separate from the world. You become present to the world in a way that most people never experience. You see the profound longing for authentic connection that exists in every human being. You witness the courage it takes for someone to show their real self beneath their social mask. You become sensitive to the moments of genuine beauty and truth that break through the surface of ordinary social interaction. And in seeing this clearly, in being present to this depth, you become someone who can facilitate authentic connection in others. Your presence becomes a clearing where others can step out of their social performances and encounter life more directly. Your authentic being calls forth authentic being in others. This isn't about becoming a hermit or withdrawing from social life. This is about discovering a completely different way of being social, a way that comes from authentic presence rather than social performance, from genuine care rather than emotional reactivity, from clear seeing rather than unconscious participation in collective patterns. When you master this way of observing, when you learn to create that clearing of authentic presence, you discover that connection was never about proximity. It was never about activity or performance or trying harder to fit in. Connection is about authentic presence, about the courage to see and be seen clearly, about stepping out of the collective trance of social performance and encountering existence directly. The people who understand this, who live from this clearing of authentic observation, experience a quality of connection that goes deeper than anything most people imagine possible. They connect not just with other people, but with the profound mystery of existence itself. They see the beauty, the meaning, the interconnectedness that's always there, but invisible to those caught up in the surface drama of social life. This is Heidegger's great gift to us. The understanding that authentic existence, authentic connection, authentic presence, these things don't come from trying harder to fit in, from being more social, from participating more intensively in collective patterns. They come from having the courage to step back, to observe, to create that clearing where things can be seen and experienced as they actually are. And from that space, you don't just observe life. You participate in life more authentically than you ever thought possible. You connect not just with the personas people present, but with the authentic being that exists in every human heart. You become present to the profound interconnectedness that is the deepest truth of existence. So if you've ever felt like an outsider, if you've ever been called too distant or too observant, if you've ever felt more comfortable watching life than performing in it, know this: you're not missing out on connection. You're discovering the path to the deepest connections possible. You're not avoiding life. You're approaching life from the space of authentic presence where real encounter becomes possible. The clearing is always there, waiting for you to step into it. The possibility of authentic connection, authentic existence, authentic presence is always available. All it takes is the courage to step back from the collective performance and discover who you actually are when you're not trying to be anyone else. And when you do, when you learn to observe from that space of authentic presence, you'll discover something beautiful. You won't just be more connected to everything around you. You'll be connected to existence itself in a way that transforms not just how you relate to others, but how you understand what it means to be alive. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, if you recognized yourself in these words, then you've found your community. Subscribe and join others who understand that true connection comes not from performing in the crowd, but from the courage to observe from the clearing of authentic presence. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's the doorway to the deepest connections possible.